concepts such as eros and philo, does that only apply if you've like established a relationship with somebody?
So there are certain loves that have to do with your sensual life, the pleasure you get from your senses. There is a different aspect of love where you use your body, you still get the sensual, the pleasures of the senses, but they're mostly connected to a unique set of emotions that you want to experience. It's not so much, I look at someone, I'm attracted to their physical body, I have sex with them, and there's a good amount of pleasure that I get from that, and then once it's finished and once I'm saturated, I just move on, which is about maybe 2-3 weeks. It really is a difficult thing for you to come to realize what sort of emotions you want to have inside you. For example, let's say you're a Catholic. And let's say you wake up this morning and you have this feeling of, you have some feelings of religiosity. For some strange reason, you feel like spiritually and intellectually homesick, okay? And there is also your companion laying next to you. And we just a couple minutes ago where you guys were doing freaky stuff, but now the freak is over, and now you say to yourself, but that was disgusting. Now, he still looks very attractive, or she, or it, or whatever, and you still want to continue with the freakiness of the whole thing, but your spiritual homelessness doesn't allow you. And so you kind of just say, there is the Bible, there is that idiot. Do I want to have emotions that come from the freak experience I will have with the idiot, my boyfriend or husband or wife, or do I want to go to the Bible? And what you're saying basically is, I'm getting pleasure from both, but for some strange reason today, it seems like I feel I will get more from reading the Bible than having sex or getting freaky with my boyfriend. And so they're both pleasure, but one has basically nothing to do with your flesh, even though you will use your body to carry your physical body to the bookshelf and grab the Bible and turn the pages to the gospel or some book that you enjoy most. So the Greeks have a very, very, very interesting way of looking at love, in the sense that there are certain sects, groups, cults that are designed to worship the goddess Eros, your physical appetites. There are certain gods, certain cults or mystery schools that experience love through the goddess of Dionysus. We call Dionysian tradition, where, and the story is, there is this kid, his parents are gone, so he's hungry, the only thing that he can see out there is like grapes. So he eats a lot of grapes, lays under the sun to get a nice tan so he can look good for Angelina Jolie, and then he falls asleep. And so what happens is that all the grapes that he had 10 minutes ago turns into wine, and then he gets drunk, and then he begins to worship the gods. And so the Dionysian tradition has to do with a specific kind of intoxication. And remember, the grape turns into wine because of the sun. And for the Greeks, the sun has a very important symbolic meaning, okay? There is another tradition for the Greeks where they make love with the goddess we call Sophia. And sometimes they use your physical body to get to the point of Sophia. Sometimes, if you happen to be extremely novice, you just use Eros for Eros' sake, you know. But I think underneath all these different shades of love, what exists is our attempt to experience something that transcends just the tables and chairs of everyday life. You know what sucks about coming to school is you wake up early morning, you take a shower like Mackay for the first time in many, many, many months. And it's a drag to get on the bus. It's a drag to get stuck on the highway. It's a drag to look at other people who don't look good, smell good, talk well. You know, it doesn't just please the ears. Lots of profanities. And then you come to class. And then you sit. And then you get bored. And then you get frustrated. And then you get irritated. And what little energy you had kind of gets depleted while you're sitting and tolerating a classroom. And what you really, really want is to sign up for a class that once in a while has the power to inspire you, to kind of remove you from your flesh, to remove boredom from you. And you're touched by excitement, by inspiration, by a moment of reflection. And it's really a very, very cheap attempt by all of us in this class to be in the presence of something that kind of inspires us and gives us the feeling that there is more to life than simply a grade or an essay or raising my hand and ask a cheesy question or just having, freaky sex. There has to be something more, and we long for it. And of course, sex becomes a very, very easy and cheap tool for us to experience that moment of transcendence. For maybe a second, for maybe 5 minutes before sex is over, you look at your companion and you say, okay, what do you want to do today? And they say, I don't want to be around you, that's for sure. But what do you want to talk about? Well, nothing with you. In other words, the only thing that the two of you really have in common is just the freak. Once the freak is over, there is nothing you have in common. Now, yeah, I was going to say more, but I'm a little tired now. I was sitting home and watching Real Madrid and Juventus. And then there is this infamous bicycle kick by Cristiano Ronaldo. It's like the virgin birth. It's amazing. And so while I was watching, I didn't notice, but my son was right behind me looking at this scenario. He says, what is that? Cristiano Ronaldo. What is that called? Bicycle kick. Can I watch some more of what he does? And then, have you seen him do headers? No. What is that? Where he jumps, all the way to heaven and then hits the ball with his forehead. So can I see one of those? Yeah. So he has the highest jump in soccer history. 2.93 meters. That's like 25 feet.
Is he tall?
Oh, he's good looking. Being tall or short matters very little, I mean, one of the nice things about the ancient Greeks is that they perfected sculpture. You look at the Egyptians, and all the things that they did. Awful. But the Greeks, the high cheekbones, the jaw, the lips, the biceps, the six-pack, amazing. And for the first time, you could see an embodiment of perfection in clay or concrete. And you look at Cristiano Ronaldo, you realize, well, this is a guy who is no longer a statue, a living, quacking, a freakish human being who has chiseled his body to perfection. Or Kim Kardashian. If you have enough cash on you and if you have enough fame, you can put yourself under the knife. And it's not so much the plastic surgery, it's your quest for beauty. Not only when you look at yourself, you're inspired by the way you look, but also you inspire other people. It's all about harmony. And so Cristiano Ronaldo is the embodiment of the boy Christos. Everything about him is perfect. His nose, his teeth, Not really. His lips, his thighs, the way he runs, the way he shoots a free kick, not free kick, free kick. The way he does penalty kicks, he jumps on the grass and the ball just rises just a bit and then he kicks it. And the way he just jumps to celebrate after he scores, that's perfection right there. I don't need to go to church and I don't need to read the Bible. Just watch 10 minutes of Cristiano Ronaldo and I'm inspired. The problem with inspiration is then you look at your life and you say, yuck, because your life is not inspiring. I'm not inspired when I look at my wife. Don't tell her that. Or my kids. Or when I come to Laney. So. The point is, my son is now heavily into soccer. He keeps telling me, when are we going to go to Saudi Arabia? I say, why? Well, Ronaldo is there. I don't want to go to Saudi Arabia, especially now. They may take my green card, my citizenship, they may revoke everything. I may not be able to come back to the States. Is that it's okay, but we can be with Cristiano Ronaldo. Well, Cristiano Ronaldo is married to this woman. She is more beautiful than he is. And so I'm conflicted. Should I like him or should I like her? But because she's owned by Cristiano Ronaldo, it would be improper for me to eye her. So I just look at him. The point is, whether you want to be attracted to Eros or Dionysus or Sophia, you need someone from the outside who can either inspire you towards Eros or Philo or Agape or Ludos. You can't do it on your own, it's impossible. You need an image. I was walking a couple of days ago on MacArthur. I went there to get shot, but it didn't happen. But I was walking there, and all of a sudden I saw this black car pull in. It's one of those cars that have a coffin in it, and in the coffin there's like a corpse. So as I was walking, and I was like laughing and giggling and being freakish, this call pours in, and all of a sudden I'm no longer laughing, and a different set of emotions come in. And I don't even know the person, but I kind of just, turn off the audio, I stand there, and I wait for the family to go into the church, then I walk behind them, and I stand there for like the next hour and a half. Had I not seen that image, there's a good chance that I would have continued with my freakish life. And then I would probably walk home saying, man, that was like a waste of 2 hours. But because of that experience, because of that image, my entire chemistry, brain chemistry changed, my emotions changed. And I realized that being in the presence of a corpse or death, something happens to you. You begin to be a bit more reflective, a bit more serious. You become more of a black and a white person. Certain things are just bad, certain things are good. Being around death makes you think seriously about your own mortality, about life, about pleasure, about happiness. But not being around death, just you continue to be an idiot. So if you, for example, want to be around serious ideas or a serious lifestyle, well, you can't do it on your own. It's really, 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 really difficult. You need alarm clocks. And maybe you can read the autobiography of Malcolm X or Mahatma Gandhi or Jesus Christ. So if you want your brain chemistry to change the location of physical body. Make sure you're surrounded by the proper images. Okay.
is it a waste of time for?
Stephen, sorry, in a minute.
Yeah. So two things. First, watching a head cut by Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah.
And the second one, I'm going to ask the same question as last week, but very differently. Do you think religion can cause people to hate other people without truly understanding why they hate them?
I'll give you an example, forgive me, Mikhail, from yesterday's class. There is a sect of Christianity, this is like many centuries ago. Well, I'll give you two examples. One has to do with, I had a Christian student many years ago, and I had said something about the Anglican Church and the relationship they had with Jesus Christ, and some of the things that Jesus Christ himself had said about his own tradition. And this person comes forth very angry, telling me that what I said was inappropriate. Then I looked at him and said, did you know that the Anglican Church was born because of Henry VIII? And it was simply because he wanted to marry someone for sexual reasons, but he was already married, and he was a Catholic, but the only way he could annul the marriage is by creating a scenario where he has the power to create a different version of Christianity, so he could divorce the wife and, of course, marry this other woman. When you lack information, or where you're governed by little information, which, if you have little knowledge, it could be profoundly dangerous. And so this person eventually dropped the class, went to the dean and complained. Okay? And then when I would run into him around campus once in a while, he would always look the other way. Yesterday in class, I had told a story that comes from, there was a group of Christians and they wrote a book called The Panarium. And in it, there is a story of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. Now, to my knowledge and all the things I have read and all the scholars I've listened to, Mary Magdalene actually didn't exist, but it's just a story that was created. Okay, it's kind of like the last 12 verses of the Gospel of Mark. In the oldest version, the last 12 verses did not exist, but somehow it was added into it later on. So I had mentioned something about his relationship to Mary Magdalene and some of the sexual expressions that he would use to educate Mary as to how she could reach the kingdom of God. So he comes to me after class and says, I didn't appreciate what you said. Okay. Now, how old is he? 19. I'm not questioning his faith. This is not a faith-based classroom. It's a classroom where I come to class. I've read a few more books than you have. I'm just sharing you some stories. So instead of sitting back, reflecting, paying attention to the way you're like reacting like an infant, just sit back, pay attention and ask yourself, could the story be true? Can I maybe go and check out the book? I am, after all, only 19 or 20 or 30. There are lots of things out there for me to learn still. Why am I having a reaction such as this? But no, all of those factors are bypassed. He just comes to me straight and says, you suck. I may drop the class. So the point I'm trying to make is sometimes you can use hate in all the right ways, and sometimes you can use hate in all the wrong ways. It really depends on who and what you are. Let me give you an example. Since you're talking about Jay-Z or Jesus Christ, I'm not quite sure which gospel, but in one of them, he grabs this like wooden stick and he destroys all the shops by the temple. And he says that this used to be a temple for God, now it's become a den of thieves. He's really pissed off. And he looks at the Jewish rabbis and Pharisees, whom he doesn't like very much, and looks at them and says, you're not going to see me around here anymore. It's impossible. I will never, ever set foot on this temple for one simple reason. You guys suck. But I will come back. But it's going to be conditional. And they say, well, what is it? If you can learn how to cry, how to repent, then I will come back. And they never do, of course, they crucify him. But the point I'm trying to make, I think hate is a very natural and organic reaction. You have a position in life, whatever that position may be, you're attached. Imagine you love your mom. I'll tell you a different. I left the house this morning around 3:50. We have a neighbor. They have a son. He's just not well. About 7 months ago, we had snipers on our roof because he was screaming and shouting and threatening his parents. So the entire neighborhood was blocked off. We had a couple of snipers on the roof, and they were there for about maybe 10 hours. Eventually, he was brought back home, but this morning he was screaming and shouting, and my wife calls and says, we have cops everywhere. They love their son. I used to watch him every morning sprint the neighborhood. Very, very good. Very fast, handsome fellow. He went to USC. But at a certain point, life just damaged him and he wasn't able to recover. Even though I see certain things, I will never bring myself to a place where I go to the parents and say, your son is crazy, you should do ABCD to him. They're attached to their son. They love their kid. And so, will they hate me as a neighbor? Probably. Is it right for them to hate me? Yeah. I have done something profoundly improper, disrespectful. So the point I'm trying to make is whatever you're attached, that attachment gives you meaning, gives you purpose, gives you a certain value in life. I have no doubt that this young man is, let's just say, in love with Jesus Christ, or his own version of Jesus Christ. And he comes to class not expecting anyone to kind of say certain things, but I do. So he hates me. He hates me because I have challenged him. He hates me because he finds me to be disrespectful. That's okay. Makai.
Is it a waste of time for some to be inspired by people like Ronaldo who are kind of warm to something that you can't really be?
Shakespeare has a play. There's a man in it whose name is Ferdinand, I think. And he has fallen in love with this woman. Her name is Miranda. She was from Oakland. I read this play last night like 50 times. He was somewhat of a king, immensely powerful, but he wanted to be with this woman. And that's one of the things about love. It turns a king into a slave and turns a slave into a king. And as I'm reading the story, I'm saying, wow, that's great. Maybe I should go out there and find myself a woman I can love. At least, play with a little bit. And just in case I do fall in love, maybe like Fernando, I can just walk away from my marriage and my children. Give her my job. Give her all of my savings. And that's one of the tragedies of inspiration. It creates inside you fantasies. And we love those fantasies. Imagine that you begin to love philosophy, and then you go to Barnes and Nobles or Amazon and you buy Plato's Dialogues, 4,000 pages. And for the first 2,500 pages, all you read about is Socrates this and Socrates that and Socrates the other. You say, man, Socrates is great. And, he truly inspires you, reflectively speaking. And then you say, you know what, I think I'm going to major in philosophy. And you do. And you get your PhD for one simple reason. You fell in love with Socrates at the age of 18. And even though you could have done computer science, made lots of money, you could have done psychology, very much like your father, who's a therapist. You could have done all sorts of things with your life and made lots of money. But no, you chose to follow the path of Socrates, which he didn't have money. He didn't have much of a relationship with his wife or kids. He walked around naked, just talking to people about life. And in the end, what did he get? His ultimate gift that people gave him was death. Okay? Rejection and death. But nevertheless, despite all that, you're inspired. And for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that inspiration turns into a slave. Every night or every day you go home and you kneel before the Dialogues of Plato. And then you get your PhD and you walk to the classroom. And all the while you've assumed that once you're in the classroom, you'll be very much like a Socrates. And then you open your mouth. And you realize students are yawning, they're falling asleep. You say, man, I really must suck as an instructor. And you're disgusted by yourself. Why? Inspiration is a moment of perfection. It's very difficult to pass by it indifferently. It captures you. And you want more of it. And then you become addicted to it. And you want to embody it. And then you realize it ruins you. The only reason why we talk about justice, why we talk about fairness, why we want to abolish racism and bigotry, is because we've had people like Mahatma Gandhi, we've had people like Socrates, we've had people like Jesus Christ. They are like the top of the food chain for us human beings. We compare ourselves to them. Imagine if everybody was like me and you. Mediocre, useless, a complete waste of lives. Anything would go. But because you and I have a tendency of comparing ourselves, as they say, soccer players, to Roger Federer, the tennis player, or Magnus Carlsen, or Jesus Christ or Socrates, the truth is we fall way short. So do they ruin us? Yeah. Do they inspire us? Yes. Are they a double-edged sword? Absolutely. Do they create conflict? Yeah. I read the story of Ferdinand and Miranda, I say, man, my life sucks. And from that point on, I can't be happy with my life. But I'm looking for something that lived in the story of Miranda and Ferdinand. I want that in my life. I just can't get it. I'm just hoping that in about 5, 6, 7, 8 years' time, I'll just forget the story completely. I'll be diagnosed with cancer. I can't do anything on my own, and there is my wife taking care of me. I'm not going to think about love. I'm not going to think about Miranda or Ferdinand. I'm just going to look at my wife and say, she's a good woman. I love her for what she's done for me. And that's one of the nice things about us. We forget. And because we forget, at the moment you forget, you will no longer compare yourself to Cristiano Ronaldo. You're just an ordinary, ridiculous soccer player who plays some town in Berkeley. Can I tell you a story? Do you guys mind? There was a guy whose name is Albert Camus, Algerian philosopher. I don't really know if he considered himself to be an existentialist, but nevertheless, he wrote this play, or this novel. It's called I think it's called The Stranger. And The Stranger is about a guy who's like me. My parents tell me I'm a Muslim. My culture tells me that there are only two forms of entertainment, politics and religion. I play soccer in the streets. There is only Pepsi Cola advertised in my culture. That's who I am. And then my mom tells me at the age of 18 that it's time for me to get married, and I do. And at the age of 18 and a half, she tells me it's time for me to have children, and I do. And so things are created inside me by other people, and I just move along. I rarely question, I rarely examine, I rarely reflect. People create inside me buttons. If those people push those buttons, and like a tiny little obedient machine, I just follow. That's Rousseau for the better of the book. Then something happens to him where there's a glitch in his system. For the longest time in the book, Rousseau just kind of just lives his life unreflectively. When Marie goes to him and says, "Do you love me?" He's a guy who's never really considered what love is, never examines it, never reflects on it. He just looks at it and says, "You want me to love you? I can love you. You don't want me to love you? I don't need to love you." Another point, she looks at him and says, "Will you marry me? If you want, I'll marry you. If you don't want, I don't have to marry you." There is a neighbor who has a dog, and there's a leash around, the dog's neck really, really tightly, and the dog is choking. And his girlfriend Marie says to him, "Call SPCA, call someone to rescue the dog." And Rousseau says, I don't like the police. I don't much care about the dog, I just don't like the police. He hangs out with prostitutes, with pimps. In fact, his best friend is a pimp. One day he's like in San Francisco, walking by the ocean, and he's holding a gun, and he shoots this Arab guy. And the police, cuff him, and he says, "I didn't shoot him. The gun just went off." In other words, it's a human being who has never taken responsibility for any part of his or her life. And the truth is, none of us in this class can be held responsible for anything. You can only be responsible for the things you have knowledge of. And when you disobey, when you're not loyal to the knowledge that you have, then someone can hold you responsible. Okay? But Rousseau feels no responsibility. And then comes a priest into his cell. And he keeps asking Rousseau one question after another, day after day after day. And all of a sudden there's an opening. And he's able to think, and he's able to reflect, and he's able to examine. And he becomes really, really angry because upon reflection, you just don't reflect on your relationship. You reflect, on your companion. You reflect on the way you see relationships. You begin to reflect on the relationship your parents had, the way you copied your parents' relationship. And you realize every person in your life have betrayed you. And you pick up this chair and you throw it at the priest and you say, "You have forced me to reflect. You have forced me to think. You have forced me to have an identity that revolves around thinking and reflection. I can no longer live my life casually." And that's the problem with inspiration. It leaves a mark inside you that though you may have an aloof couple of weeks where you're just walking around in a daze being your old stupid self, once in a while, this moment of inspiration comes forth and says, imagine you're in a long-term relationship and you're walking around the lake and you see two people holding hands and you see two people like kissing with a great amount of passion. And then you look at your companion and you don't have to say this to him or her, but you have this feeling, I had that. I did that. It was just a century ago. What the hell happened? How did life steal that from me? And from that point on, you want to kind of manufacture some emotions, but you know that you're faking it. You're jealous, you're envious, but you have no power over all the awful things that life has done to you. And that's the problem with inspiration. It connects you to beauty. It also connects you to the ugliness that is you and that is your life. Really? Um, Before I go on a long and boring rant, may I ask why you're asking? So, let me talk about addiction in a fun and repulsive way. Is that okay? I hope you guys don't mind. So I'll start with talking about a student I had many centuries ago. His parents divorced at the age of, I think, 6 for him. And it was an abusive relationship between the parents. And so he suffered for the first 5 years, seeing his father just physically abuse his mom, verbally abuse his mom, and then it has emotional effects. So he usually, from what he told me, he would walk to a corner of his room and just sit there and cry. And that became his way of coping with all the things that he was seeing. And so that became a core part of who and what he was. Very reserved, very shy, never trusting anyone. But there came a point where, you get to be like 12 and 13 and 14, and eros, there is something hormonal about us human beings. At a certain age, it just erupts like a volcano. It overtakes you, and it brings about what we call mania. You become like crazy. And some people become crazy more than others, but something about it just kind of all the wires connected in your brain that used to hold you and your life together, all of a sudden, everything becomes loose. And you're just unmanageable to yourself and other people. And so there was also a time for him where he desperately was looking for a companionship, friendship, intimacy of sorts, a mother he never had, a father he never had. So he resorted to watching porn. Because if you've been abused emotionally, there is a good chance that you're not going to be social. And if you're not going to be social amongst people, there's a good chance that society and whatever it has in it is not going to be digestible for you. You're not going to be in it. You're not going to be part of it. You're not going to participate. So you're going to be a loner. And that's what happened to him. He became an immense loner. Now, loneliness is not fun. And all of us in this class, what we desire and demand and are required to have is pleasure. We want that. I mean, it's not fun to come to class and get bored. You want to come to class and once in a while ask a good question, be inspired by someone's talking about something, right? And so, now you would think that he's watching porn because he loves sex. That's not true. He was watching porn because first comes the abuse from the age 0 to 5. And then comes the fact that as a human being, you need to be cared for, but there was no one caring for him. That pushed him into being immensely lonely and sad and depressed and not having a chance to survive in society. Okay? Out of desperation, he watches porn. And it happens at the age of like 11 and a half, 12 for him. Okay? He says, oh, what if life on the outside sucks, if my home life sucks, if my room is dark and bleak and gloomy and that too sucks, my laptop is my Messiah. I turn it on, I punch in some letters, and the world of porn opens itself to me. It becomes a way for him to escape life. At least initially, for the first 5 minutes. Okay. Now, one of the things about any desire is this. Once you're satisfied, you're no longer interested. Okay. But then the poverty comes forth. Then you go out and you realize, you say hello to your mom, but she flips you off. You go back to your room. The effect of porn has dissipated. It's gone away. Something about you says, I think my body says, yes, I can do porn again. So instead of having pleasure after 5 minutes, now you'll have it after 15 minutes. As the days go by, it's not 20 minutes. It's not 30 minutes. It's now an hour. And you do an hour of porn every 2-3 hours. You give your body some rest. And even though you may want to manipulate your body to watch porn and do the things that porn demands that you do once in a while, you realize your body resists. You just can't do it. So you give your body some rest and you go back to it. And then something really interesting happens. You forget about your parents. You forget about the abuse. You forget about how lonely and pathetic you are. You forget the fact that you were once 12, now you're 20. And for the past 18 years, this has been your religious ritual, your Jesus Christ. You go home after class. The first thing you do, not you eat, not you go to the bathroom, not you shower. You turn on your laptop. Now, how does something become ritualistic? Because that was for him a ritual. When you do something over and over and over, it becomes part of who and what you are. And even though you may go to a class, that's a sex ed class or a philosophy class or an anthropology class, and you may walk home saying, I'm never going to do porn again, you've been in the cradle of this ritualistic tradition you've created for yourself for the past 10 years. It's really difficult to walk away. You could be addicted to good things. You could be addicted to things that are harmful. You know, it's just difficult to kind of figure out what is good and what is bad on your own. You need someone from the outside, I suppose, to tell you, to guide you. It's a story I was telling my class yesterday that, you know, I was 18 and I suffered the confusion of any 18-year-old, you know. Was alone, lonely, was maybe sad and depressed, confused, angry about why my friends were getting ahead and I was stuck. You know, my friends were getting their degrees and I hadn't even graduated from high school. And so, and my hand was crooked. And it's a Persian thing. And by that I mean, I would take things. I'd go to Safeway and steal things. Go to Costco and steal things. Go to a bike shop and steal things. Okay. And it was a joke amongst me and my friends that I would eventually end up in prison, right? And then, luckily, of course, I ran into this man. Initially, I didn't like him. And that's, you know, about the gradual process of liking someone. Then I began to like him. Then I became addicted to him. So much so that we had gatherings 3 times a week and I would go to all of them. And just in case he would say, Amir, there is no gathering, I would break down, okay? And my addiction to him led me to philosophy. My addiction to him led me to getting degrees in philosophy. My addiction to him forced me to apply for jobs and eventually get a job. My addiction to him brought me to the classroom. I opened my mouth and I said, I'm a bit animated, not bad. And those animated moments inspired some students who went to school, you know, they got the degrees, and now that's their livelihood. And I consider this particular addiction to be relatively healthy. And so my job, part of it in this class, is not for you to like these ideas. That's not enough for me. I'm greedy. I want you to fall in love with these ideas. And if you fall in love with these ideas, that love, it has enough juice in it to force you, even if you don't want to go to school, a major in philosophy, major or minor, and then get your master's in philosophy. And then at a certain point say, you know what? Maybe I should go into teaching. Okay? And you may be very scholarly, very academic, but what's going to happen is that there are going to be moments in the classroom where you will shine. You will inspire yourself. You have no idea what you're talking about, but once you hear yourself as you're giving a talk, you say, man, I'm saying some really, really wonderful things. And then you look at the students and they too are inspired. The rest of, your lecture, like for 10 minutes you're inspired, for 2 hours you just suck. But those 10 minutes will keep you going for the next 25 years. That's a good addiction. You could also hang out with Snoop Dogg. Any news from anyone? Yes. Isabella. Good for you. That's great. You start next semester? What?
Just gotta pass this.
You better save some money. I'm not looking for an essay from you, but an envelope with money and some honey.
Okay, yeah.
Your essays will not be enough to pass this class. Yes, Matthew. I'm just joking. Yeah.
Successful, is it more beneficial to have a realistic portrait of yourself or to be delusional with your own abilities?
All of our lives are guided by fantasies and dreams. It's only a matter of time before life wakes you up. I mean, you may have read tons of books about love. You may have written tons of books about love. And you may, in fact, get yourself into a relationship when you realize that, yes, you know a lot of things about love, but when it comes to its application, you're just a novice. Despite you going on TV and all these shows and talking about love and various shades and colors, the truth is you're just a novice. Okay? So life has a tendency of removing all the delusions and illusions and dreams and fantasies that are somewhat ridiculous and infantile that all of us have about ourselves. They are also your guiding light in the sense that without them you wouldn't push forward. Okay? Here's the thing. When you want to write an essay and you hope for an A, and if you have a good instructor, not someone like me who doesn't give feedback, but if you have a good instructor with a pen that's filled with red ink, you'll get your essay back and every page has like 50 comments. And you pay attention to those comments and you will go back, you will read your essay again and you will revise it over and over and over again until the instructor hands you your essay back and you have an A. Now you're happy. Okay? But the only reason why you're revising is first because you like this instructor, second you like the class, you like the subject. If you don't like any of those three components, there's a good chance that you may drop the class or just be satisfied with a C. Okay? Just get a mediocre grade and remain mediocre. So all of us have no choice but to be in life. And life requires us to be active and to be engaged. It's like writing an essay. But instead of holding a pen and a sheet of paper, it's done in a conversation. It's done in the way you're looking for a work, some profession where you make money. It's done in a way where you take classes. It's done in the way that you form relationship with people. And the truth is, you're not going to get it right the first time. You have to do it over and over and over again. And forget the idea of sin. that you're supposed to get everything right the first time, and just in case you don't, you're a loser and you need therapy and you need to be on medication. That's just a set of false narratives, okay? We have no choice but to make lots of mistakes, okay? And the trick is to know that you're incompetent, to know that you're insufficient, to know you're not going to reach success or happiness first try or second try or fourth try, where you have a thick enough skin and a good enough capacity and stamina about you where you can do things, you can fail, you can kind of sit back and study. And the problem is you have to be open to possibilities. If your mom says, son, you're stupid, don't go on dates, listen to her. Which means that you have to be open to people criticizing who and what you are and who and what you believe in, okay? And these are very, very difficult things to do, because when someone says you're stupid, your identity kind of just crashes. You have to kind of sit back and say, am I really stupid? Am I really dumb? Do I really not know how to think or feel about things the right way? Having said all of those things, I must confess, I have forgotten your question.
The saying is it more beneficial to be sort of delusionally confident in your own abilities, or to have a more realistic restraint?
So I'll probably forget your question, but let me give it to you this way. For about 10 years of my life here at Laney, on Thursdays we used to make sandwiches for 200-300 students. I would have 5 students in my office. I would go to Costco on Tuesday, go to La Farine and get donations for bread on Wednesday, cut everything up, okay? On Thursday, we would have 5 people in the office. We would make sandwiches, and we would have 200-300 students coming to the office by the estuary. And, they would eat, they would mingle from 12 o'clock till about sometimes 7 or 8 at night. I had a certain narrative in my head. It's nice to be around students. Some of my students are homeless. Some of them don't have any money to eat. This is a good cause. And plus, most of the stuff I'm getting is for free from Costco and from La Farine, the bakery. Time passes. You get a little older. You understand things a little better. You understand the American culture a bit better, American psyche a little better. And then you say, fuck it, I'm not doing this again. Part of it has to do with, of course, your age. The other part has to do with just Americans they're not gracious. They're not thankful. They don't know how to say thank you. And part of it really has to do with the fact that you guys don't have an open door policy. In other words, you don't have to spend 5 days cleaning your house, inviting strangers to your home, feeding them. And then when they leave, they call you and say thank you. Americans have a tendency of, and Westerners, I think for the most part, it's not just Americans, and it's everywhere now. I don't mean to just say Americans. I think because people live such a lonely life here and they have a closed door policy, I think thank you and understanding what people go through to make food for you, to create for you a comfortable environment, that doesn't exist in this culture. Okay? So after a while you say, you know what? I'm not going to do it. For what? For who? Why? Yeah. So sometimes your delusions are removed by your own understanding of how things function. For the longest time, I don't know if you were around, if you were born in the 1980s when the earthquake hit San Francisco or the Bay Area. All of them. And so what happens is, you're walking and all of a sudden the ground in front of you just opens up and swallows you. Like one of the platforms on the Bay Bridge is falling, collapsing. And all of a sudden you realize, earthquake can happen at any time. The earth could open up and devour you at any time. And all of a sudden your faith and trust, the fact that the earth is solid, that's not the case. And so you move around very, very cautiously. After having my triple bypass surgery, every time I eat anything that has a slight amount of fat or butter in it, or it has too much sugar, the image that comes to my mind, like a nanosecond after, is a stroke. is being on this bed in the hospital, having someone axe my heart open, going into my veins, replacing them with other things. Okay? So, what reality does for you, it shrinks your world. You can only have 5 or 6 people in it. Delusion allows all sorts of possibilities. You know, I will invite you a couple times to my house. If I don't hear thank you from you, I'm just not going to invite you. It's not worth my time. Because thank you is the very basic of things that you should know. And if you don't even know that, there's other philosophical aspects, more esoteric, more subtle, you will never get there. So remember, when in Rome, do as Romans do, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. But before you can give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, you have to understand who Caesar is, what Caesar does, what sort of society Caesar desires to create, and what sort of desires Caesar desires to implant inside you. And give to God what belongs to God. You can't take God into Caesar, and you can't take Caesar to God. It doesn't work. I mean, it may be that you're nonchalant with your friends, but if I was to invite you to my house, you can't be nonchalant, man. You need to say thank you after you leave. In the form of a text, an email, or whatever. If you're that dense, you're just fucked. Are we? Thank you. John? Yeah.
What do you think about Marx?
So, Karl Marx is an interesting man. I think anyone who's a social activist is an interesting man, interesting human being. Marx was delusional early on in his life. He was a dreamer. He loved Hegel, and he loved the dialectic tradition of Hegel. He belonged to the young Hegelians who would sit around and talk about this and that. Until urbanism exploded, until factories came into being, until he saw that tiny little towns where everybody knows everybody changed into these vast cities where now nobody knows anybody. He came to see that 10-year-olds go to a factory at 4 in the morning and they stay there till midnight. By the time they come home, it's 1 in the morning. They get 2-3 hours of sleep, oftentimes no shower, and they go back to the factory. And he wasn't like me, where he sees people who are homeless and just passes them by. And that's one of the things about Karl Marx being a romantic, is that romantics are sensitive. Things impact them in ways that it doesn't impact other people. And so he goes home and he cries. And he says, I don't have time to wait to see whether what Hegel says is true or not. I don't have the life of Noah, who lived 900 years, where he was able to see the evolution of history. I want to see change now, in my lifetime. You know, your father may be 45, 50, John, which means that when your father is 60, he's going to look at you as this ripe fruit. And he's going to say, does John give me any of the money that he makes? Does John come home and take care of me once in a while? Your father can see that. If, on the other hand, your father was 90 when he had you, the only thing he will see is a fruit that is profoundly unripe, unedible. He won't be able to see all the things that he wastes on you, his time, his money, his energy, his life. So he doesn't see the outcome. Okay. And kind of like Karl Marx, he says, you know what, I want ideas to live in society now, to make changes now. And so he walks away from the young Hegelians and Hegel's philosophy. He changes them. He still believes in the Trinity, but he changes them profoundly. One of the things that you see in capitalism is that not only does the capitalist own your body, they also own your mind, they also own your emotions, they also own your desires. They own every goddamn aspect of who and what you are. I don't know if you're familiar with Malcolm X. You have two kinds of human beings, according to Malcolm X. You have someone who lives in the field, and you have someone who lives in the house. Someone who lives in the house says, Elon Musk loves me. Donald Trump loves me. They will do whatever they can to love me more, to make my life more prosperous. Someone who lives in the field says, I know the kind of vultures that they are. If there is a way I can sell my Tesla and buy a donkey, I will do so. I'm always looking for my freedom from the capitalists. Okay? And so Karl Marx argued that there is a way that they can escape from the tyranny of those who have built us a house. And we are imprisoned in that house. And the owners of that house have given us the illusion that they love us, they care for us, when in fact they don't. Okay. Now, the other thing you need to understand about the potency, the importance, the power of Karl Marx and his ideas, up to the 1980s, almost 50% of the world population considered themselves a Marxist. I mean, consider that for a moment. A guy who came in around the 18th, late 19th or early 19th century. There is so much power in his ideas that you have no choice, like an Angelina Jolie. You see her and you fall in love with her. You hear the ideas of Karl Marx and you say, my God, this is beautiful. You know, why is it that you wake up at 4 a.m. to go to Pete's, you grind the coffee, you put the filter, you clean the shop, the company makes $1 million a day, but at the end of the day, after 8 hours, you only make $100. How is that fair? You do all the work, but you can't pay ends meet. You're short on rent, you can't buy your kids toys, and you just leased a car. Which means what? That capitalism has inspired you to buy a car, to buy a house, to buy this, to buy that, all on your credit card. And even though if you want to leave Pete's, for the next 50 years of your life, is your credit is bad. So what will you do? You will forget the fact that you've become a slave, that you're owned by Pete's. You're owned by the credit card companies. You're owned by a mortgage company. And the only life you have is a life of despair. It's what Marx called alienated self. You're a stranger to yourself. You're a stranger to your wife. You're a stranger to your kids. You're a stranger to your friends. You have a home, but you feel homeless. You're in a marriage, but you feel lonely. You're a father, but you feel that no one cares for you. The problem with Karl Marx is that he overlooked human nature. We are greedy. It's only during moments of inspiration where we're willing to share. We've been here for a few million years. Something about us, and it happens unconsciously for the most part, I think. Life is dangerous. People are evil. They will backstab you. Unless there's a mass movement where everybody comes together harmoniously like brothers. Marx is great, but I think, what lacks in his philosophy is considering how we all fall victim to our own nature. He had argued that in a system such as this, all acts of sex are acts of prostitution. And it's true. If you're lonely, what the hell do you do? Everything becomes transactional. But do not be deceived by those with great ideas. They will ruin you. Be very grounded. Be a closet Marxist. Know the dangerousness of the place in which you live. My skin color is very much like yours. ICE is everywhere. They may look like you, talk like you, but they have power. And in their power, there is no compassion. That should force you to be very, very careful. You should lean more towards Sigmund Freud than Karl Marx. But when it comes to you waiting at the light and you see a homeless person, then you should be a communist. If you have $10 to spare, spare it. It's good to see all of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your bolsters are actually really smart.
Say again?
No, bolsters are actually really, really smart to the point that